Then let's move to the customer app deployment. So let's open the Enatega Multivendor app. This is the delivery app for the customers. Go to the package.json and remove the offline tag. Go to the environment.js, and this is for the production, and this part is for the local. Just update the URLs to the local URLs. Make sure the IP address matches with your private IP address. Just copy the backend IP. I think they both are the same. Make sure you change the IP address in all the 3 links. The rest of the configuration will be fetched from the admin, which we updated in the previous videos. We've already added the Google API key, so we are not required to hardcode the key, and the same goes for the amplitude and the rest of the API keys. We can change the directory to the Enatega Multivendor app. Let's start by first installing all the required dependencies. Once all of the dependencies are installed, we need to set up the development application. Just go to the ES.json and make sure you have the development channel, and go to the app.json and just change the version. If we have any development build with the same version, then you will go to the edit part, but since we want a new build from the scratch, we'll just change the version. Just make sure you change the version in both the attributes. Now let's first create an Expo account. Alright, so before proceeding, we'll be using 3 different services in this part, including Expo, Firebase, and Google. We'll be using Expo to store our projects, and we'll use the same Expo account to generate different builds of our Android and iOS application. Next, we'll move to the Firebase and create different Google service accounts, so our applications can communicate with different Google services, Firebase services like notifications. And in the last part, we'll move to the Google console, where we will create different OAuth client IDs, so our Android and iOS applications can use the Google sign-in. So just stay with me, and in the next part we'll configure all these 3 portions. Let's go to the expo.dev. Just sign up if you do not have an Expo account, or if you have an Expo account, you can just log in. Since I do not have an account, I'll just create a new one from the scratch. Give it any valid username. Just give it any simple password that you can remember. Just agree all the terms of services and click on sign up, and this will set up your Expo account. And this is important step, because without Expo we'll not be able to create any builds. Now the next step is to create a new project. Give it a display name. Let's start with the test customer app, because we are dealing with the customer app, but you're more than welcome to name it anything you want. Just click on OK, and you have these commands. You can either use them or you can ignore them for the time being. Now your app has been set up. So you have the owner name, the slug, and the ID, and you have to make sure that you remember them, or if they are persistent in the Expo, then you're good to go. Just go to the multi-vendor app again, go to the app.json, and here you have the owner. Just replace the owner with the correct owner. Go back to the Expo, copy the slug, Now copy the app ID. Just scroll down a little bit and you should have the project ID here inside the EAS attribute. Just copy the actual ID and replace it with the old one. Just make sure you place it everywhere because there are multiple places where you will find this ID. Just make sure everything is correct. Here we have the bundle identifier. Let's change it to something else. Let's change it to com.customer.app. And this is important step, so just make sure that you follow every step exactly the way I'm doing. Yes, so we have the package name in two places. Just make sure that you replace both of them. Now the next step is the Google Maps API key. Just replace it with the API key that we generated in the previous videos. We can get it from the admin, or if you want, you can create a new Google Maps API for this application. Just make sure you do not push app.json to the GitHub, or even if you are pushing, just make sure that you remove these API keys so you do not expose these sensitive data points. Just replace the Android collapsed title as well with your custom title. Let's make it test. we have we have this name in two places, so just replace it in all the places. Just go through all the contents of the file and make sure everything is intact. Everything seems fine to me. Now let's go back to the Firebase again, and this time we'll create another project. You can use the same project again or create a new one with the test app. Do not uncheck this part again. I repeat, do not uncheck this part. Just click on continue. We'll just wait a couple of minutes and the Firebase will create a new project for us. We need this Google service.json file. So the project is created. Now let's continue. Now let's start by first creating a Firebase app for our for Apple app. Let's change the package name to the com.customer.app, just like we did in our app code. Let's give it a nickname to the app. This is optional, and click on continue. Just click on next and next and next. Now go to the console. Just refresh the page. Now you can see we have a customer app. Let's go to add app, and this time we'll create another app for our Android app. Give it the same package name com.customer.app. Also you can give it a custom nickname. For the timing we'll ignore the SHA, but let's go Yes, for the time being we'll ignore it because this is an optional part. Let's just register the app again. Again, just click on the next and continue to console. Now we have the customer app. Go to the settings, and then you can scroll down and you should have Google service.json. Just download the file, open up the directory, now go back to your multi-vendor app and paste that file over here. You should have a copy, so just delete the old one, which is google service.json, or you can just copy the content of the copy file to the original file. Let's talk about google services.json. Again, this file can be obtained when you are creating a Firebase project and also creating multiple apps, Firebase apps, for your different mobile apps. So first, in the first section we have like the project information, including the project number, the Firebase URL of our project, and then the project identifier, and also the link to our storage bucket, right? And then we have, since we have three different clients, the restaurant, the customer, and the rider, we have three different client information. So if we just open one of them, we have again some other attributes and information about that particular client. Like inside the client info we have like the identifier for the mobile app, right? And then inside that we have this, since this is for the Android, we have the package name of the Android inside the Android client. And in the same way we have an iOS, so we will have an iOS section over here as well. And then we have the auth client ID, which is actually an identifier that is used during the auth authentication, and the actual API key that is used by the Firebase to authenticate the client. And in the services section we have another attribute, which is like app invite service. This is when you actually invite other applications, when you actually allow other people to use your applications in different platforms. So then you will have some different objects over here representing different clients. And inside that we have also a client for the iOS. So you can see that we have the ISO and then the bundle ID as well. So in the same way we can have, this can vary depending upon the services that you have subscribed to in the Firebase, but the most important things are the obviously the project information, and then the basic client information, and also the key. These are the most important configuration that are actually used by our mobile app to communicate with the Firebase and use different services, and also authenticate during those services. And this time we'll update the Google service account. So let's go back to the Firebase. In the project setting we can just go to the service accounts, and then you can see on the left side we have three service accounts. So just click on generate new private key. Just make sure you do not push it to any public repository. Click on generate key, and this will download a new file with all the required credentials. Just paste the file in your multi-vendor app, and then copy all the contents. Go back to the Google service account of your multi-vendor app and paste it over here. So the Google service account is actually a complete JSON with multiple attributes. This is obtained when you create an application in the Firebase project. So there are multiple attributes. The first one is the type. This is what represents the type of your service account. of your Firebase account, sorry, the application or the project that you created. So we are actually using the service account, so the type would be service account. Then we have the project identifier as a project ID. The private key ID is actually used to the sign the tokens, right? The private key itself is a private key that is used to authenticate and sign the request. Then we have the client email associated with the service account, and then the client ID as an identifier of the service account. And then the auth URL is actually an authentication endpoint used by Firebase, and the token URL is actually used by Firebase to obtain new tokens. Then we have two different certificate URLs. Both of them are used as authentication. So the first auth provided certificate URL is actually used to for the auth authentication, and the client cert URL is actually used by Google to identify the service account that is being used, or the identify the identity of the service account that is being used. And then go back to the eas.json file and make sure you have the production channel set up for Android, where the build type should be APK. And then open up the terminal. And this time we'll type EAS login to log into the Expo. Type the username or the email address, and then the password you used while signing up the account. You can see the prompt over here which says logged in, so you have been logged into the Expo account successfully. Go back to the general tab and we'll create a Google service account again. But before that, let's just type ES build, and this will start building the production app. Just make sure that you type the command correctly. So the command is ES build colon configure, and then just enter and select all, and then type another command which says ES build, and then the profile, uh, the platform is going to be Android and the profile is going to be production. The names should be same, otherwise the build will fail. Just press enter, and this will start building a new APK for our Android. Now it's uploading to the ES build. If you're using the free version, then it may push our release to the queue. Just open up the Expo, and on the left side you will have the builds option. You can see that we have a production build in progress. We're using the free tier queue, so the status is queued because there are other people who are also using the same version, the free version of the Expo. Now open up the restaurant app and go back to the app.json again. Now do the same changes again. For the name for Slug, you can create a new app in the Expo, just like we did for the customer. You can just create a new project for the rider and for the restaurant, and you can just follow up the process and you should be good to go with the production app. Now go back to the Firebase again, open up the project test app, And we have the customer app as an Android app, and we have an Apple app as a customer app as well. Make sure that the bundle ID is same for both, so it should be com.customer.app. So this is the bundle identifier in the restaurant. Currently we are in the restaurant. Make sure that you update these as well. Create a new app, and then you can have a new bundle identifier as com.restaurant.app. Do the same thing for restaurant and for the rider as well. We can see that the build is in progress. Now at the bottom we have add fingerprint, and we have to add these fingerprints. Take these fingerprints from the expo and then add one in the Firebase and the second one in the Google console when we create our OAuth client IDs. Let's go to the expo and open up our test customer app. So for some reason our production build failed, and then I rebuild it again, and now we can see that we have a success status. Just come to the overview and refresh the page, and you should receive a successful build. Now at the sidebar, you can just come and enter in the credentials. You can see that we have an application identifier as com.customer.app. Just click on it and you should have two fingerprints over here. The first one is SHA-1 and the second one is SHA-256. One of them will be used in the Google console and the second one will be used in the Firebase. So just copy the SHA-256 in the test app, click on the customer app and add the SHA-256 hash over here in the fingerprint. Just copy paste it and then click on save. Make sure you create different apps for different applications, for admin web, for customer web, for restaurant, and for rider, and for the delivery app as well. And then copy the SHA-1 hash, and we will use the SHA-1 hash in the Google console. Let's go to the Google console and create a new project over here. Click on the side menu, API services, and go to credentials. So first we will actually complete the consent screen. Click create credentials and then go to OAuth client ID. Just click on configure consent screen. Select external option and click on create. Give it a name, which is a required field. Let's just give it test app and then select the support email. App logo is not necessary, you can just ignore it. Ignore the app domain input fields as well. Just add a developer contact information. You can just type any email you want. Click on save and continue. Currently we are in the scopes and we do not need to add any kind of scope, so we can just ignore it and save and continue. We know we don't need any users as well. Just click on save and continue and click on back to the dashboard. So we are done with the consent screen. Now we can go back again to the credentials and create credentials for the web, Android, iOS and the Expo. So I'll start with the web, which will be used in both the admin and the customer portal. Alright, now enter all the JavaScript origins and also the redirect URLs. Since we'll be using the same OAuth client IDs on both production and local, we have to put both the URLs. So we know that the local is running on the localhost port 3000. Add it in the authorized redirect URLs as well. Now you can add the second URL, which should be the production URL. Now do the same thing for the authorized redirect URLs as well. Here the example app.com can represent the domain of the Netlify app. Click on create. And this will give you the client ID for the web. Now let's follow the same process for the Android, iOS and for the Expo as well. So let's go back to the auth client ID and create another client ID for the Android. The package name must match with the package name in the application. So for the multi-vendor app, it was com.customer.app. Now copy the SHA-1 fingerprint and paste it over here. Now we have the client ID for the Android. Now let's create another client ID for the iOS. Go back to the eapp.json and we should have in the iOS attribute we should have a bundle identifier. Just copy it and paste it over here. This should be same as well. Now click on create and this will create another client ID for the iOS application. Now let's create the final client ID for the Expo. We can go back again to the OAuth client ID, select a web application and type any name. Let's type Expo proxy, add a URL over here. Just type https auth.expo.io. Now add the same URL in the authorized redirect URL section. Just make sure that you append the owner name. So the owner name is Kashif Dev. Just copy it and append it to your URL. And then the slug of your application. Now we have the OAuth client ID for the Expo as well. So we have created all the 4 IDs and we can update our admin portal. So just go to the configuration in the admin portal and update all of these keys in the Google credentials section. Just copy the client ID for the web and go to the client Google client IDs and paste it over there. Do it for the Android as well. Just copy the ID and paste it in the Android client ID. Now we do the same thing for the iOS. And the last one is going to be the Expo. Just copy the client ID for the Expo and paste it in the Expo client ID. Once done, just click on the save and this will update the configuration. Okay, now let's go back to the Firebase account again. And this time you can see that I have created another app for the restaurant. I have an Apple app for the customer as well, and then I have two different web apps for the admin app and for the web app. Just create these two as well, and then download your Google service.json file, and go back to your multi-vendor app and update your Google JSON file. You can see that we have both the clients over here, the customer and the restaurant. So when you create the apps and download the Google JSON file, that JSON file will be collective and will have both the client's details, the customer app and then the restaurant app. And you can create another app like for rider, and then once you create the app and download it, that will also be included in the Google JSON file. So copy the URI of the iOS and paste it in the app.json. Find the CF bundle schemes URL scheme and paste it over here. Make sure all of the details are correct, like the slug, the owner name, the versions, the bundle identifier for both iOS and Android. For Android, it's going to be the package name. The package name for Android is also correct. And we can see that the Google JSON file is also fine. Now let's go to the EAS JSON, and we can see that we have in the development channel we have the iOS simulator setup in order to run this application in the simulator for iOS. So let's clear the screen and type EAS build :configure. Let's configure for all, and then type EAS build -- platform is going to be the development, the iOS, sorry, and then the profile is going to be, or the channel is going to be, development. We are doing this to run our application in the development mode. In the previous section we did it for the production and generated a new APK, and this time we are doing it for the development. The rest of the process is same as production. It will be added to the queue in the Expo, and once it's done you can download the APK and install it. Just refresh the page and you can see that the iOS simulator build is in progress. Now let's move forward to the restaurant app setup. In order to generate the production APK, you can follow the same steps that we performed in the customer app. But for the development, it's pretty simple. We can just go to the package.json, just remove the offline flag, go to the environment.js and add the local URL of the backend in the GraphQL and in the VS GraphQL, and just make sure that the private IP address is correct, and this should match with your system's private IP address. I will repeat it again that we are doing it for locally for development, for the local setup. If you want to generate a production build, you can follow the same steps that were performed in the customer app. Create a new Expo account and just update the es.json file, app.json file, and you're good to go. Then install the packages by using npmi. Once you're done with that, you can just run the command npm run start. Just make sure that you change the channel attribute to the channel instead of release channel. And then we'll be using Expo. So make sure that using Expo is selected, and then press I to open up the iOS simulator, or press A if you have Android simulator. So currently I'm running the screen recorder and multiple applications, and I'm doing multiple activities. So the build may take some time. So I'll just stop the recording over here, and then we'll come back when the build is successful. So we can see that the build is in progress. It's at 70% right now. Once it reaches 100%, the app will start in the iOS simulator. The bundle is complete. Just wait a couple of seconds and just make sure your phone is unlocked. If it's not, then the app uh, will not show. So we can see that the build is complete. Now we can just come to the iOS simulator. I think it's locked, so we can just unlock the phone, and we should be able to see the restaurant app up and running. You can see that. Now let's move forward and do the same process for the rider app as well, and run it locally. All these steps will be same. Let's just go to the rider folder and go to the package.json and remove the offline flag. Then we'll go to the environment.js file and update the URLs, and but before that, just make sure that you change the attribute to the channel, and then update the backend URLs since we are running it locally, but you are more than welcome to use the production URLs as well. The IP address is still the same, so I'll just use the same IP address in both the GraphQL URL and the VS GraphQL URL. Make sure you remove the S, which is for the secure server, and since we are using locally, we do not need any secure server. We can see that the Google Maps is being used in the environment.js, and we did not need to hard code it over here, because in the admin portal section we actually updated the configuration and also updated and added the new Google Maps API. So we once we start the app, the configuration will be fetched from the database, and we'll use that, and then we can access all of the configurations using the configuration object. So let's just go back. Let's type npm I to install all the dependencies, and make sure that you are in the correct directory. Currently we're in the restaurant, so let's switch to the rider directory and then clear the screen, and then type npm install to install all the necessary dependencies. Once all the packages are installed, we can just type npm run start and this will start our server. Now we can just switch back to the Expo. We do not need to run the development build. So just press S to switch to the Expo Go, and then press A to open up the APK on the Android, or press I to open up the iOS simulator. So just need to wait a couple of minutes over here, and then the app will start in the simulator. I'll stop the recording here again. So you can see that the build has completed, and we can see that we have the sign in and the login page. So now you can just go back to the admin, create a new rider, and you should be able to sign in successfully. For both restaurants and rider, you can use the admin portal to create new restaurants, and also you can create new riders to log in. So this was the whole tutorial about how to set up the whole Enatega application, including the backend, the front end, and also the mobile applications. So we started with the backend API. We first set up it in the local environment, right? And then we moved to deploy it on the railway application, and then we moved to the admin portal and set it up in locally and then how it actually looks like. And then in the next step we moved towards generating different keys, and we generated multiple keys, and that was one of the most important steps. Once we generated those keys, we actually added them to the configuration section in the admin portal. Just make sure that if somehow I missed a particular key, like I generated the key but I forgot to add it to the admin portal, just make sure you do it, right? Whether it's amplitude key or tbilio or sentry or any key that I've generated or used in the Enatega, just make sure that once you generate those keys, you have to update the configuration in the admin portal. And then we move to the deployment of the admin portal on the Netlify. So the deployment part was same for both customer portal and admin portal, right? After deploying the admin portal, we move towards the customer portal, and we ran the portal locally, right? And we saw it was running perfectly fine with the local backend API. And in the final step, we move towards working with the mobile applications. So first we created an Expo account, right? And then after getting some little information about like who the owner is and the slug of the application that we created for the customer app or the delivery app, right? We used those credentials and updated our customer delivery app, right? And then the next step, we created some OAuth client IDs, right? And then once we created those IDs, we updated the configuration in the admin portal, right? And in the final step, we created a production build for the delivery app, or also known as customer app. And in the next step, we set up the restaurant app locally. We saw how to run and set up the local environment for the restaurant app, and we ran the application on the simulator. And we did the same thing for the rider app as well. So this was the whole workflow and the steps that we took to set up the whole Enatega application. So this was from the team side, and in case you guys face any difficulties or any issue, you guys are more than welcome to contact the development team, and we will be more than happy to support you guys in